Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm standing out here in my garden and I need to tell you that the rains have come, and so we're all very elated. But there's one plant I have chosen today and I want you to come and have a look at it. So come with me. So here I am. Now the plant I'd like to introduce you to today is the Epidendrum Radicans, which is otherwise known as the crucifix orchid or the reed orchid or the poor man's orchid. Now the reason why they said a poor man's orchid, at the time when orchids were quite famous in Europe in the beginning of the century, is it was so expensive to get an orchid. So this epidendrum actually became the poor man's orchid, and it's the toughest and it's the easiest type of orchid to manage. So welcome back to my channel. My name's Alice and I'm the Red Soil Gardener. Now, when we look at these Epidendrums Radicans, or let's say as we know them as the 5-star orchid or the crucifix orchid or the reed orchid. Now, these plants are actually tropical plants and they do attach themselves to anything vertical. So with these beautiful 5-star orchids is that you do have some that actually do live on top of trees, and basically they get their nourishment and their moisture from the air. But then you do get, if they do fall on the ground, they can grow on soil. Now what happens is that these beautiful plants, and I want to show you something, because look at those waxy leaves they have. They're quite sturdy and they're all very waxy, and then what happens is you do get a flower. Now the flower, the most amazing thing is that when you do hang them in hanging pots, then suddenly you get this stalk that shoots out, and at the end of it is where you get your flower. And these flowers come in red, they come in orange, they come in pink, they come in white, but I have the red variety. Now I want to show you why they call it a crucifix orchid, because when you do look at the flower and you hold it up like that, you do see what appears to be a cross, and that's why they call it the crucifix orchid. Another name for it, as we said, the 5-star, is because all these petals are 5. So if you look at it, is that you do have the 5-star, and then again, your crucifix. Now what makes it so easy for this plant to be propagated is that basically you do get rooting from every single node and also from the base of the plant. So once you do carry out a propagation, it's actually quite simple to take the pups, or the keikais they call them, and use them for propagation purposes. And because basically it is quite simple to actually have these, to propagate them so quickly, is that I use them for hanging baskets. And like what I've done here on my tree, I actually just dangle it on my tree and it just looks really happy. It's been there for several years, but every sort of warm weather it does produce its flowers. Now what sort of soil does it like? The thing about these, what should we call them, the 5-star orchids, is that they like a well-drained soil. It could be sandy, loamy, but basically it needs to have a well-drained soil. Some people do use cactus mix, or you get an orchid mix, but for as long as whatever you're using is well-drained, the plant should be happy. What is the light requirement? What I usually find with the light situation, I usually have it in an indirect bright area. For example, this area underneath my tree guarantees that it does have some sort of dappled light, but at the same time receives the morning light. So usually about 2 or 3 hours of morning light or afternoon light is enough to keep it going. If you don't give it enough sun, what happens is you get fewer blooms. If you do give it a lot of sun, like direct sun, you do get the leaves turning a slight sort of maroonish red, but it's a way that the plant uses to protect its leaves from the sunlight. Otherwise, on the other hand, if you do have it in full sun, remember that this is quite a thirsty plant in a way, and you could have leaves that are a bit sort of limp because the plant is dehydrated. What is the water requirement? I would actually water them once a week, but make sure that it is dry before you water it again. In spring and during blooming time, I would actually water it more often. So with flowering, blooming, it's when you do see the stalk appearing, is that basically that is when you're going to have the blooming season, and it's usually spring or in summer. And if you do want to do any propagation or repotting, try to do it in spring when the new buds, new growth is starting to come out, and then you can repot this plant, which should be done at least every 3 years. So propagation. So what happens is that when you do have your plant, what happens is at the nodes, this is where these pups or kekais do form. And for propagation purposes, all you do is snip it off, just like that. And then these could be the ones that you're going to propagate. So basically, this is what one sort of propagation that you can do. So what I have here are all the little babies, pups, and all I'll do is actually just snip them, remove some of the leaves here, and that's what I'm going to submerge in this moist soil as it pours down. This is what I'm going to actually submerge. So what I'm going to do with these baby pups is just simply put it in the soil, and this soil is really nice and barky. I'm trying to replicate the rainforest and tropical forest. So what you do is just simply do that, and you're guaranteed that within a month the rooting should have taken place and the baby would have been happy, and then from there you could move it into a larger pot. So this is one technique that you could use when you're attempting to propagate the 5-star orchid. Now another method that you can use is actually using the rhizome, because underneath the soil, or as it sits on a tree, you will get a structure like this, which is actually the rhizome. So what you do is that if you submerge this into soil, you're definitely going to have your baby sprouting up. So what we have here is I've showed you how to propagate it using the pups. And also what will follow in Instagram is when I submerge the rhizome and we follow it up on Instagram. The final way of actually also doing your propagation is simply just using the stem. So I'm just going to move this here, and these are my stems. As you see, I've actually removed the leaves, and I always try to have at least 3 nodes there. So I'm just going to remove these leaves like that. So I have removed the leaves, that's 2, and here again have removed that. And all I do is simply make sure that all those 3 nodes are submerged in soil like that. You just put it in the soil, and there you go, another propagation just using the stem, and that should actually take off, and we can follow that on Instagram. So fellow gardeners, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. It is getting rather windy, but it's a good sign that the rains are here. And don't forget to like and share, and also press that notification button and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to check us out on Instagram. I do post a lot of interesting things there as the week goes by. And don't forget, send me messages, also comment on our YouTube channel. I'm always there, and I do love receiving your comments, and I'm always there to answer them. And thank you so much, and do have a lovely, lovely day.